Hoie Ferrell, and I am the Director of Care on campus. And I'll let go ahead.
I'm Claudia Velazquez, and I'm the support person at Care, front desk, kind of just helping out where I can.
So I guess when I first started putting together this workshop, was back in May when Brooke and Kevin gave me some gentle nudges to put in a proposal. And this is just something that I think about a lot, but nobody could have anticipated that we'd be having this conversation on this day, given the climate and the decision to have Brett Kavanaugh on the Supreme Court. And for these two things to come together is, I have a little bit of chills right now, because in some ways it's hard to show up on a day like this, because the struggle feels a little extra monumental, that this is where we're at today. But it also really reiterates for me why we do the work that we do and why we need to have this conversation about how our systems for accountability aren't serving us, the people, and what we can do about it. So that's really what we're going to talk about today. I want to say that we don't have all of the answers. We just think about this and talk about this a lot. But there's a lot of shared knowledge in the room and in our community. So this is a big group session, but we're gonna ask you to contribute, and we're gonna use some technology, we're gonna try out some technology to do that. We're also gonna talk, sort of brush the surface on a lot of issues that provide context to the work that we're asking to do with community accountability. We know that these things that we're going to bring up go much deeper than the brief contextual overview that we're providing. And we could spend a whole day on each of these topics, but what we hope is that you will continue to think critically about this and have this conversation more broadly and deeply within the community. So we're going to have you try something out here. Waiting for this to connect. We know it's finicky. And I believe it will work. Okay, so usually we want you to put away your cell phones and have all of your attention up here. I'm going to flip the script today. Pull out your cell phones. And any moment now, there it is. I'll have you, hopefully it doesn't jump around when I'm following my instructions properly. So pull out your phones and text that keyword, Kelsey F, my name, Kelsey F 066 to the number 37607. And that's how we're gonna ask you to have some conversations in small groups with the people around you, and then contribute to our conversation by texting into that number. So we'll let you know when those questions come up, but to get started and join the conversation, text to the number 37607, text Kelsey F066 to join the session.
So we know that systems aren't working, and so I'm going to just talk briefly about prevalence and the estimates about how much sexual assault actually occurs in our communities. So 1 in 5 women and about 1 in 71 men will be raped at one point in their lives. But if we put sexual violence at a broader definition, the molestation and child sexual abuse is actually 1 in 4 and 1 in 6 for men. Yet this is the most underreported crime. So about 73% of sexual assaults are not reported, and only 12% of child sexual assaults are reported. And then there's about, the falsification of a sexual assault case is about 7.1%. And it's been shown that it only occurs in very certain demographics, and the law enforcement agents actually label rape as false when they don't have enough evidence to be able to prosecute someone. So even the falsified sexual assaults that we see or that are mentioned are actually done by the actual police agencies or the criminal justice system. So, as you can see there, the underreported crimes. So, we would like to talk a little bit about, and this is where the texting comes in, about what are some barriers to reporting for victims of sexual assault. And so you guys can use you can join in and kind of, it'll pop up here.
Evan's helping with the slides, Kelsey.
Okay. Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so text there is back on that screen, Kevin, thank you. I can just like give you a little hand to change the slide. So when you're gonna text to join, just text once Kelsey F066 to the number 37607. And then as you can see, as you're texting live right now, it's creating a word cloud for what the audience thinks are barriers to reporting. Fear, shame, violence, blaming, danger, denial, financial, retaliation. That moves really fast. Yeah, I'll let Claudia continue, but there are a lot of different barriers that people experience to going to the police.
And so, as you can see, fear and shame and retaliation are some of the biggest ones. The ones that are the biggest from research is retaliation. They believe the police wasn't going to help at all. There was a personal matter, so they didn't have to involve the police. They can, talk about it at the house and communicate. It wasn't important enough to report. And they didn't want to get the perpetrator in trouble. And then they believe the police wouldn't do what they needed, what they wanted them to do. Wouldn't hear them. So police are actually, unfortunately, very unsafe for a lot of folks. I'm going to specifically talk about the undocumented population and how sexual assault reports from Hispanic people, so this is came out last year in Los Angeles, have dropped by a quarter this year, and we know that a lot of police have been saying that one of the biggest barriers for people who are undocumented to come forward is fear that deportation is going to happen for either themselves or the perpetrator. So because of the executive order that President Donald Trump issued in January of 2017, there's been more than 81,000 people deported since then. And because of this, it's a 37% increase over the year before. And that is a very big fear for people, to be deported, to be, taken away from their children. I don't know if you've seen the media about, the camps of where the children are, of where they keep them, right? So this isn't something that people are going to go to the police for because of the fear of ICE, because of the fear of being outed as an undocumented. And of course, briefly talking about people of color in general, the queer community, sex workers in particular, sex workers actually get raped and assaults happen to them. But they are committing a crime, so they aren't believed, they're shamed by the police, and they're told that it's their job and instead get incarcerated for being a sex worker. Trans women aren't believed in super high rates. The safety for them is paramount because of the large number of trans women being killed yearly, monthly, weekly. But they aren't believed by police either because they're told that they can't get away either. So, as we can see, there's a lot of different barriers, and police aren't helping the cause, unfortunately.
The institutions that are in place for accountability for sexual violence can be re-victimizing and re-traumatizing themselves. Traditionally insensitive responses to survivors that include victim-blaming attitudes by law enforcement, prosecution, judicial officials, all of this can really compound the trauma. more than any other crime that we see when it comes to sexual violence. These institutions are, in a lot of ways, starting to revert to this. In fact, this is called the second rape, and it's described by many survivors as such. Survivors are forced to relive the hurt and shame through the system and the culture that has victim blamed and not believed and not supported them. I want to, we can get the next slide. One more. Keep going. There we go. So I worked across the hill in Silicon Valley in a post-Brock Turner world, so this comes up a lot for me. But I really wanted to read what Emily Doe said in her statement. Bring a little joy to the room. So Emily Doe said in her letter, I was pummeled with narrowed, pointed questions that dissected my personal life, love life, past life, family life, inane questions, accumulating trivial details to try and find an excuse for this guy who had me half naked before even bothering to ask for my name. After sexual assault, I was assaulted with questions designed to attack me, to say, see if her facts don't line up. She's out of her mind. She's practically an alcoholic. She probably wanted to hook up. He's like an athlete right now. They were both drunk. Whatever. This is the reality that many victims face when they engage in what we have as our accountability system in the United States. Next slide. This, by the way, I created this before today's decision. We see this not only in these local cases, but on a national scale. When Trump says, I have no doubt that if the attack on Dr. Ford was as bad as she says, charges would have been immediately filed with local law enforcement authorities by either her or her loving parents. I ask that she bring those filings forward so that we can learn date, time, and place. We see how that works, right? Next slide. And then this social media post, I think, really speaks to me about the dichotomy that survivors face when engaging in the system, especially in this juxtaposition of the Brock Turner case and the Kavanaugh case, right? So, woman reports a predator anonymously. Anonymous accusations aren't credible. Woman reports under her name. She just wants fame and attention. Woman reports years after the attack. Why did she wait so long? Woman reports immediately. What was she drinking? Where?
So Kelsey touched on it about the criminal justice system being very violent in nature and re-victimizing. So there are other issues, the systematic ways that oppression occurs in the criminal justice system. One of the few ways is racial profiling. So racial profiling is actually one of the lead causes of a lifetime likelihood of incarceration in youth. And so stopping people on the street, stopping people in their cars, there's a term driving while black, driving while brown, right? So because they are stopped by police at high rates. Another thing is collusion. So as you just saw with the tweet from President Donald Trump, collusion is at stake, right? So he's colluding with the perpetrator. Judges, lawyers, peace officers, all of these people colluding with the perpetrator. Also in jails, there was a study in 2015 that found that 20% of survivors who were incarcerated, who were trans, were actually sexually assaulted by the facility staff at least once during their stay. And so
next slide.
Yeah, there you go. And then also, I didn't talk about this earlier about police, but police can also be perpetrators. And so young women of color, homeless women, low-income women, lesbian, transgender women, women who are or are perceived to be engaged in drugs or the sex trade, they don't go and report. And the majority of people who are facing a lot of these issues are from what people call minority communities, but I don't like that term, so just underprivileged communities in general. So they have a lot of different oppressions occurring at the same time. So police officers also don't receive proper training. There was a study made. Did you put that on? No? Okay, there was a study done about police officers across the U.S. of how they get training on sexual violence and sexual harassment occurring within their, jurisdiction within their office. And more than half said that there wasn't anything. Nothing online, nothing, no 2-hour training, no one came in to talk to them about what it meant to do that. It's in a booklet, and it kind of, discusses it in that sense. It's not to say that every single department is this way, but the survey was conducted in 2015, and they showed that that was the case.
Okay, so the criminal justice system is what we believe in as the United States as our method of accountability, yet it's not very effective at punishment or deterrence. It is, even if people, that few snippet of people who go to the police for all of those reasons, those few people who make it to the police to report, it is unlikely that their case will lead to arrest, be referred for prosecution, lead to a conviction, or have any jail time, as is illustrated by this graphic from RAIN, which is based on statistics from the Department of Justice. Brock Turner, again, was sentenced to 6 months and only served 3 after he was charged with 6 felonies for sexually assaulting an unconscious woman. Unfortunately, that is only one of many examples. It got a lot of media attention across the United States, but that story is all too common. And again, I could stand up here all day and give you examples of when the criminal justice system has failed to provide the accountability at levels that are comparable to the crime that has been committed. Even incarceration, when someone is incarcerated, our system in the United States does not facilitate healing for either party, either the aggressor or the survivor. Nor does it seek to successfully reform the aggressor before they're released.
Okay, so now we're actually bringing it back to the community. Those are all surface, what we wanted to briefly touch on to make context. But how is this actually affecting our communities, right? So the cost. So 50% of rape victims lose or are forced to quit their jobs in the year following the rape due to the different, the reactions, right? So PTSD, anxiety, all of these different issues that don't get handled if they don't have resources to go to. Lifetime income loss is about $241,000 for someone who's a victim at an adolescent age. And up there from CalCASA is the tangible costs. So it talks about medical costs, investigations, mental health care, and intangible costs of income loss, quality of life, suicidal acts, and then the total is nearly $130 million that is being affected by all of this. So this is what, if money is the issue, this is how much money we're talking about that's being lost and being shown. So that's a community issue, so we don't talk about it as such. This year? Yeah. Okay, so now we have another poll that you guys can text into. And this question is, how have you seen your community impacted by violence? And we specifically want to talk about sexual violence. So anything that you can come up with, you can put on there.
Take a couple minutes if you'd like to talk to your neighbor. If that's helpful, turn and meet someone next to you who maybe you don't know. and talk about how this impacts our community. I mean, we're all here for a reason, but I know that there's a lot of knowledge in the room about how this is really filtering into our lives.
More violence, loss of belief in police, hopelessness, anger. The thought that privilege prevails, victims not believed. Fear, doing daily tasks, suicide, pain, anger, not wanting to speak up. Yeah. Desperation, all of these, very true. So we're going to go into community accountability, and Kelsey's going to explain what we actually mean by it and how we as individuals, institutions, and communities, members of communities, have a responsibility to see how we are either helping or to end this violence and what we can start doing to end this violence.
Thank you for those thoughtful responses. I really echo all of those ways that we're impacted. Believe it or not, what I'm not saying here today is that we should not engage in or seek to improve the criminal justice system. Rather, that it's inadequate to rely on the law to be responsible for ending violence in our communities. It's affecting all of us, the people in our lives. We need to shift the broader perspective on how the community and society reinforces and normalizes violence, and that we have a responsibility to prevent violence, address violence that does occur, and reduce the harm that is caused. That's the responsibility of all of us in the community, and we can't rely on the criminal justice system to do that for us. What it means is that we also have a responsibility to recognize the role that we all play as individuals and institutions and communities, both in perpetuating violence and normalizing violence and being complacent when it happens. So this has been really depressing, but what we want to do now is talk about what we believe community accountability can look like. This is a community-based strategy where we address violence within our communities through these principles that I put up here. I want to call out Insight International, who has done a lot of work around community mobilizing and particularly this issue. And I've taken some of the information and guidelines that they provide and sort of built on that. So I want to bring them into the conversation as well. So I think that we need to create social change and transform the political conditions that are reinforcing oppression and violence. Like all of the things that Claudia has just talked about, we need to be looking at these systems and the ways that they are continuing to be in power, especially on the day of today. We need to take action to dismantle, I'm ahead of myself. So create and reinforce values that resist abuse and oppression. And ask ourselves, why do we tolerate this? As a community, why do we tolerate all of this harm? We should seek ways to take action and dismantle the norms of violence. Provide safety and support to community members who experience violence by respecting their self-determination and believing them. And Claudia is going to talk more about that in a minute. Hold ourselves and each other accountable for abusive behavior and normalization of violence, and use processes that allow people to account for their behavior and transform it before it escalates to sexual violence. Engage in restorative justice practices that seek change. And address violence, disrupt it, be an upstander. Confront abusive behavior on all levels. No more, it's not my problem, it's not my business. And organize with others to have brave and challenging conversations, even when that takes an emotional toll on us. There's no formula for what this looks like, but I believe that it's something that we all must work towards collectively, and that as a community, we have a lot of strength to do these kinds of things together. We have some principles that are going to guide us along the way. Next slide.
briefly about recognizing humanity. So I'm not just talking about the humanity of the survivor of sexual violence, but also the perpetrator of sexual violence. So for us in the room, it's a lot easier to recognize humanity in the survivor, correct? Believing them, understanding the trauma responses, giving them the space that they need. But I want to discuss a little bit about what is harmful about dehumanizing an aggressor. So it's totally valid to have a lot of different feelings towards aggressors. There's a lot of rage, desperation, anger, how could they do this? What kind of monster is this, right? But we have to go deeper than that and look at the complexity of each person that needs to be recognized, right? And the way that we hold people accountable have to be humanistic in nature. They can't be what we've been seeing as being called monsters, being called names, being told all these different things. So, dehumanizing the aggressor contributes to larger issues of oppression in communities. So, for example, a Latino man a Latino man rapes someone. What's the first thing that's going to happen in the media? It's going to be that all Latino men are rapists. A poor neighborhood, gets attacked by a rapist. What's going to occur? The whole neighborhood is going to be othered for being poor and for not having resources to be able to stop this rapist. There's actually a tweet that I didn't have time to put into the slides, but I can read it. So it said, fear of black rapists have justified slavery and racist laws. Fear of brown rapists have justified mass detention and deportation. Fear of trans rapists have justified the push for bathroom bills and the suicide rates of trans folks. So what I'm not saying here is to feel, to go have your way to feel empathy for them, but to see that it's a complex issue. It's an issue that holds two people in place. So instead of the person being labeled as a monster, use their name, who they are, the person. And no accountability in community could, this is a little difficult to say, but we want to be able to make sure that our communities are safe. And so by humanizing the aggressor in our communities, is that it's doing better for the community than if we try to other them. I hope that makes sense. But, so what we don't want to do is generalize them. So just like we don't want to generalize a survivor as a symbol, we also don't want to generalize the aggressor as a symbol for all evil either.
And so the quote on there says, dehumanizing of aggressor contributes to the larger context of oppression for everybody.
And then the next part that I want to talk on is about centering survivors and they're prioritizing their self-determination. So Tarana Burke is the creator of the Me Too movement. So it didn't start in Hollywood, it started in 2012 with her. And her words say these women are able not to just share their shame, but to push the shame where it belongs, on the perpetrator. So we want to give space for stories. So the Me Too movement actually did a lot of good. Recently, she also said in an interview, it's not about finding all the bad men and putting them in jail. It's about bringing strength to the survivor. So Me Too isn't about putting the perpetrator down. It's about bringing strength to the survivor to decide what they want to do with their healing and what they'd like to see happen to the perpetrator. So after the Me Too movement, we saw everything that went on in Hollywood. It's still going. It's lost a little steam, unfortunately, but there was a Ted Bunch is the co-founder of A Call to Men, and it's a social activist group that promotes healthy and respectful ways of being a man and dealing with toxic masculinity. And he saw an increase in the amount of men who wanted to join the cause of ending sexual violence, and a very large amount of adolescent boys and men who wanted to join to be able to be part of the movement. And then of course, when Dr. Ford, when she testified, the National Sexual Assault Hotline saw a 147% increase in calls on Thursday. So these stories want to be told, right? People don't want to keep them a secret. People want to heal. So another thing to do is to promote healing for the survivor. So what safe spaces are there in our community to be able to do this? Are there workshops? Are we actively engaging and listening and understanding survivors? We work up at UCSC and we're working on building, spaces where survivors can come out and hang out and, talk to each other about what's happening. Do we do that in the city level? Do we do that at the, county level? These kinds of things are ways to be able to promote healing. It's also cross-functional cooperation is needed, right? So it needs cooperation from peace officers, healthcare providers, community leaders, schools, places of worship. We can all help in some way to bring an end to sexual violence. And this can also help in collective or historical healing as well, which has permeated communities for many years, and this can also help. And then letting the survivor have control of what they want to do, right? So letting them be the person in charge, letting them be in the backseat, letting them not have to, be traumatized and go to the police. It's about them making their own choices and being able to be okay with that. And also letting the survivor choose who they want to involve in their process. And then of course, removing shame and blame. Shame and blame was one of the biggest parts of the little bubble when we were texting in. So, by blaming a single individual for the sexual violence, it's not seeing the greater context of everything that's happening in the community. So what we have to do is we have to expand that viewpoint to, see everyone that's being affected. Because while the survivor is the one that holds it within their body and their mind and experience all of that, but who's to say their family members? How do they handle that? The people that they go to school with, their siblings, their friends, right? And then from there, how do the friends handle it with their families, with their other friends that they don't know, right? So it's a trickle effect of how it happens. And there's 3 cycles that I just wanted to mention really quick about how we can discuss prioritizing survivors. So there's a cycle of inaction. So we want to break the cycle of inaction. It's about witnessing things occurring and not doing anything, turning a blind eye, survivors feeling the shame, not letting them speak, failure to call out microaggressions that happen in everyday life. There's a cycle of ignorance. Sexual violence isn't an issue in our community. What are you talking about? Or people believe stereotypes and generalizations. People choosing not to educate themselves on these issues. Or relying on survivors to be their educators, which puts a very big emotional strain on them. And of course, the last one for bigger communities is the cycle of not fighting. There's no trust anymore. They deflect the blame because it's not occurring to them personally. Problems continue. And of course, the failure to encourage and support survivors in their healing. So these are all ways that these are all the ways that hurt survivors in the long run. So we're trying to break these cycles.
So I think the next one.
Okay, so then the next question is, how do you envision a community that centers survivors? What would this look like on the community level for you? What can you do personally as someone in the community, or what can you think of larger structures that can do something for the community? And you guys can talk amongst yourselves as well if you'd like. It's kind of a big question to bring up.
Create safety for all. Normalize talking about this. Trust and start by believing. Shared safety. Pay attention. I like that one. Support groups. Survivor-led agencies. Create safety, lots of safety. Yeah, safety on a personal level, and I think on a community and institutional level, right? Survivors valued and seen as capable and resilient and leaders on this issue. Educate. Trauma-informed policies and leaders. Better screening by healthcare providers and reporting. Increased funding. Safe camping locations for the homeless. Listen and believe. Ask. Adequate shelters, yeah, especially in this community. All of these things are compounded by homelessness. Criminal justice system reorientation away from perpetrator-centric investment. Exactly. Increased training for law enforcement. Awareness month. Spaces that are welcoming of all regardless of status. Embrace vulnerability. Understanding trauma. So you can continue to think about that. Everyone knows that rape and domestic violence crisis agencies exist. No shame from fathers. Support survivors' needs for basic needs while working through trauma. Education around how folks respond to trauma, work through discomfort. Automatic compassionate response. Different administration. Yeah. We'll move on from there. That is a cornerstone for me. Someone this week said to me that it feels like the day after election, but Groundhog Day. So you can go to the next slide. So Claudia, I want to circle back to the way that we think about aggressors. Probably most of us in this room do really survivor-centered work, which is great, but the perpetrators are a part of our community as well. And they are their fathers, their brothers, their friends. They can be a caring and loving person to their family. They can be an active member of their community. They can be a Supreme Court judge. And they can also be a rapist. So when we talk about all of these systems, and we look at the perpetrators of the violence, we need to recognize the privilege of the aggressors. Because sexual violence is not about sexual gratification, it's about violence and power and control. And what keeps the perpetrators in the power and control. We have to recognize the privilege of the aggressors, not just their gender, but also their class, age, race, political status. Think about how aggressors use their privilege and how those systems keep us trapped in cycles of oppression. And then dismantle it. Next slide, and we've got another question for you. What will you do to bring these principles to your community and act on them? What can you do as a community member seeking to end violence? Be brave. It does take a lot of bravery, right? Educate others. Awareness. Speak truth. And speak up. Talk with my sons. Yeah, I think there's a theme here that we can't stay silent anymore. Bring awareness to the issues and start with my own family. Vote. Please vote. Please, everyone vote. Start the conversation and dismantle systems. Fiercely connected to the truth and tell our stories. Advocate and support directly. Pursue legislative improvement and show up.
How about force them to show his family to pay their taxes?
We could do a lot with that, with those tax dollars, huh? Go to rallies and protest, craft enforceable policies, be a voice to those who don't have one. Ask different questions. I like that. Work for change. All of them are amazing. Talk to men. Hold the hope. Not fall into stereotypes. They're so dangerous. Believe all survivors. Be okay with anger. Yes. I'm angry. I'm angry today. healthy families. Work with criminal system to expand victim concern support. Get at least one male friend to come next unity. Thank you. Challenge current policies. Yes, all of these things. Every single thing that you have put up there, the collective knowledge in this room, every single one of those things is tangible for us in this community to say no more. That we're going to normalize believing survivors and seeking consent, and we're not going to normalize violence anymore. We're not going to be quiet. We're going to have those conversations. We're gonna bring people into the conversation. Right? We're gonna break down those systems of oppression and the microaggressions and the snide comments and the rape jokes. And break that down and provide support for survivors on a community level, while we also seek to improve the systems that we have so much trust in the system to create accountability. And we have to wield our power to do something about it.
There's like a theme.
One more question. I don't have it in my notes. So where do you have power and privilege that you can wield to support survivors, hold aggressors accountable, and challenge norms of violence in your community? Where does your privilege lie? Whether that's with your family, your workplace, whatever it is, where's your privilege and how are you going to wield that?
Spread the word. CPVAW. Respect of others. Yes. Survivor-led organizations. I'm white and I'm on it. Yay. Monarch services. Yes.
Okay, it's the end. We're done now.
Thank you for everyone who was able to input there. Oh, there's more.
What
Bilingual
matters
awareness.
is that this doesn't end when the slide ends,
Yeah.
right? What matters is that you take this out of this room and let this presentation be a call to action to all of us. And I don't know, questions? We have time? And we'll take questions if you have them. Or not.
Question, on your statistics, in the early part of your statistics, where did you get your data from so that it validates it? Because I like that, but when I bring it back to my team, they want validation. They want to know where it comes from so that I can validate it. I saw the part where it rained, but I didn't see the ones from earlier. I didn't see where they were validated. So.
Yeah, so we've got information on our sources on most of the slides, and we're happy to share that. I think that statistics and numbers are important because it does, like you said, it does validate what we do and what we know, right? But they're also super subjective. So we've shared numbers today that may have been contradicted by other things that you've heard throughout the day. And depending on where you get the information, which we're happy to share, like when we talk about one in 6 men is impacted by this, you also have to look at the definition of what we're talking about, right? 1 in 6 men, but you can go to 1in6.com and it's going to tell you all of that information.
Well, see, for me, when I look at those, I hear the different validations in the different areas, but with the way our society is and with the internet, you go to look something up, and unless you can go to Truth Finder or something to validate what it's really saying, you can get so many different truths when people get out on tangents. And
so that's absolutely a valid point. That there's contradictory information all over there. So what I think is most important to know is that whatever the numbers are, it's too much, right? It doesn't. These numbers help us to wrap our heads around the impact of what's happening, but And some data is going to show you it's getting better, and some data is going to show you it's getting worse. And it doesn't matter if it's all bad. And we all have to step up.
I think it's important to have the unreported issues that happen as well. So many victims that just never report. Yeah, so a lot of the numbers we do see, I've learned, are underreported on a regular basis.
Yeah, absolutely. So the numbers that we see are underreported because these aren't, it hasn't been normalized to talk about this, and when people talk about it, they aren't getting the support and validation and belief that they need. And so things are vastly underreported, and any numbers that you're going to get on this is there's some speculation because there is so little reporting. But I can say that from what we know in our office, there are studies that show that people who have an advocate like myself are more likely to engage in a criminal justice process, or also in our case in Title IX process. And in our office, we see 80%. 80% of people who come to us choose not to report. And there are vastly more people on campus who aren't even coming to us yet. Yeah.
I have an observation about the presentation. I think we need to be careful about othering law enforcement. So I heard kind of at the beginning of the presentation a few triggering words for me as a city of Santa Cruz employee that has colleagues that are officers. The police department or police departments heard victims, for instance. And then juxtaposed to that, there's conversation about perpetrators and having a sense of empathy around that. And so I just wanted to comment on law enforcement agencies are part of probably the epitome of the patriarchal system.
Mm-hmm.
And for us to dismantle that, we have to be really sensitive about their humanistic aspects of that too. So I just
Absolutely, and I think that's a really valid point. And I've worked with some really incredible law enforcement officers, and that's such a good point. And I agree that when we talk about how the law enforcement as an institution has re-traumatized and caused harm, I'm really talking about the historical things that we know about what survivors have experienced. And I will say I've done a lot of training with law enforcement officers. When I was working in San Jose, we would do roll calls and trainings, and then I would see rookie officers going to their first SART and doing just an incredible job of trying to show up for the survivor in the right way within their role. And I think that that's incredible, and I think that that is something that is really shifting. But there's also, even if I see more trauma-informed officers out there than not right now, this is the perception, because this is what has happened historically. So thank you for your comments. Yeah.
So I just feel that we just need more education for the kids, for officers, because as you said, I've seen very good officers that have done a great job to help with the victim and with the perpetrator. And also I've seen them abuse it too. I've seen both sides, but as we educate, we grow and we learn, and we can do better. We just need to be educated from our children to the adults.
Yeah.
It's the growth.
Thank you.
I feel really inspired by today and want to acknowledge all the good work that's happening in our community and how everyone is working together and is creating more shared safety, and that this conversation definitely will continue. And I look forward to next year.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think that's a great place to end. Thank you so much.